The glass tower of Harrington Enterprises stood like a silver needle against the evening sky, its windows glowing with the scattered lights of late-night workers. On the 38th floor, Natalie Brooks sat hunched over her computer screen, her auburn hair falling loose from the clip she had fastened that morning. The clock on her monitor read 11:47 p.m. But time had lost all meaning hours ago. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, entering data and cross-referencing figures for the quarterly investment portfolio. This was the third consecutive night she had stayed past midnight, driven by a dedication that went far beyond her job description. Nobody asked her to work these hours. Nobody would notice if she didn't. But Natalie had long ago accepted that her satisfaction came from the work itself, not from recognition. She had been with Harrington Enterprises for 2 years, occupying a small desk in the financial analysis department. Her colleagues knew her as the quiet woman who arrived early and left late, never joined them for happy hour, who rarely spoke unless directly addressed. They didn't know that she had saved the company from 3 major financial miscalculations in the past year alone. They didn't know because her supervisor, Sullivan, had presented each discovery as his own insight. Natalie told herself it didn't matter. The important thing was that the mistakes were caught, that the company remained stable, that jobs were protected. Her need for invisibility ran deeper than professional modesty. It was a survival mechanism she had perfected over years of disappointment. The numbers on her screen began to swim together, blurring at the edges. Natalie blinked hard, trying to focus. She had skipped lunch today, and breakfast. Come to think of it, she couldn't remember her last proper meal. The project deadline was tomorrow. The analysis had to be flawless. A sharp pain lanced through her head, sudden and brutal. She gasped, pressing her palm against her temple. The fluorescent lights overhead seemed to pulse and brighten, each flicker sending fresh waves of pain through her skull. Her heart began to race, pounding against her ribs with alarming force. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Natalie tried to stand, thinking she needed water or fresh air or anything to clear her head. But the moment she pushed back from her desk, the room tilted violently. The floor seemed to rise up toward her and the ceiling spun away. She reached out blindly, her hand grasping at empty air. Then gravity claimed her. Darkness swallowed everything. She had no sense of how much time passed. Consciousness returned in fragments like puzzle pieces slowly fitting together. She became aware of softness beneath her, very different from the hard office floor she expected. Then warmth, a jacket draped over her body that smelled of cedar and something expensive. Finally, a voice, deep and concerned. Speaking quietly nearby, her eyelids felt impossibly heavy, but she forced them open. The world came into focus gradually. She was lying on a leather sofa in an office she had never entered before. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city sprawling below, a river of lights in the darkness. Modern art hung on the walls, and everything spoke of success and power. This was the executive suite. She was in Vincent Harrington's private office. Panic fluttered in her chest. How did she get here? What had happened? She tried to sit up, and immediately a wave of dizziness forced her back down. Don't move yet. The voice came from her left, and Natalie turned her head carefully to find Vincent Harrington himself, seated in a chair beside the sofa. He was leaning forward, his elbows resting on his knees, watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. She had seen him before, of course. Everyone in the company knew what he looked like. But she had never been this close to him, had never seen the flecks of gold in his dark brown eyes or the worry lines creasing his forehead. He looked younger than his 35 years in some ways, yet carried himself with the gravity of someone who had seen too much too soon. Mr. Harrington, she managed, her voice coming out as barely more than a whisper. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. You collapsed. His tone was matter-of-fact, but something flickered in his eyes. I found you on the floor by your desk about 20 minutes ago. You've been unconscious since then. The company doctor is on her way. Humiliation burned through her. This was exactly the kind of attention she had spent years avoiding. I'm fine, really. I just need to get back to work. The portfolio analysis is due tomorrow, and I haven't finished the final section. 8. Vincent's expression hardened. The portfolio analysis can wait. When did you last eat? The question caught her off guard. I had coffee this morning. Coffee isn't food. When did you last have an actual meal? Natalie tried to remember and came up blank. 2 days ago? 3? I've been busy with the deadline, busy starving yourself. He stood abruptly and walked to a small refrigerator hidden in a wooden cabinet. When he returned, he pressed a bottle of water and a granola bar into her hands. Eat, drink. Those aren't suggestions. There was something in his voice that made arguing impossible. Natalie took a small sip of water, then a bite of the granola bar. Her stomach cramped with hunger the moment food touched it, reminding her just how empty she was. Why were you still here? She asked between bites. It's almost midnight. Vincent returned to his chair, and for the first time, she noticed the tiredness in his eyes. I could ask you the same question, but I already know the answer. You've been here past midnight every day this week? The security logs don't lie, Miss Brooks. The use of her name startled her. You know who I am? Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Did you think I didn't? Natalie stared at Vincent Harrington, trying to process his words. The CEO of a company with over 800 employees knew her name. Not only knew it, but apparently tracked her comings and goings through security logs. The thought should have unsettled her, but instead she felt something else entirely. Something she couldn't quite name. I'm just an analyst, she said quietly. There's no reason you would notice me. Vincent leaned back in his chair, his gaze never leaving her face. You're Natalie Brooks. You graduated top of your class from Columbia with a degree in finance, but you paid for it entirely through scholarships and night jobs because your mother got sick and needed care. You started here as a junior assistant and taught yourself advanced portfolio management by staying late and studying the work of analysts 3 levels above you. In the past 18 months, you've caught 12 critical errors in investment projections that would have cost this company millions. Each word landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples through everything Natalie thought she understood about her place in this company. How do you know all that? Because I make it my business to know the people who actually keep this company running. He stood and walked to the windows, his silhouette dark against the city lights. You want to know what else I know? I know that Derek Sullivan has been taking credit for your work. I know he presents your analysis as his own insights in every department meeting. I know you let him do it because you think staying invisible keeps you safe. The accuracy of his observations stole her breath. It does keep me safe. From what? Vincent turned to face her, and the question hung in the air between them. Natalie looked down at the water bottle in her hands, the plastic crinkling under her grip. She had never spoken about this to anyone at work, had never planned to. But something about the quiet of the night, the strange intimacy of this moment, loosened the words from her chest. My father was a stockbroker, she began. Brilliant, charismatic, everyone's favorite person in any room. He told me I was special, that I had a gift for numbers just like him. He promised to teach me everything, to bring me into his firm when I was old enough. She paused, the old pain still sharp after all these years. Then the market crashed when I was 15. He lost everything. And instead of rebuilding, instead of staying and fighting, he just disappeared one night. Left my mother and me with nothing but debt and questions. Vincent moved back to his chair, sitting down slowly. He abandoned you. He taught me that being noticed, being special, being promised things means nothing. People will tell you you're important right up until the moment they decide you're not. Natalie met his eyes. So I learned to not need that. I learned to find satisfaction in the work itself, not in recognition. If nobody notices you, nobody can disappoint you when they leave. Silence settled between them, heavy with understanding. The city hummed beyond the windows, oblivious to this exchange of truths. I lost my wife 4 years ago, Vincent said quietly. Natalie's head snapped up in surprise. This was not public knowledge. Kara, we met in business school, built this company together from nothing. She was the heart of everything I did, the reason behind every decision. His jaw tightened. Then one morning she went out for her usual run, and collapsed from an undiagnosed heart condition. She was gone before the ambulance arrived. Vincent, I'm so sorry. After that, I threw myself into work. Expanding the company, acquiring competitors, building an empire. Everyone thought I was driven by ambition, by the need to succeed. He looked at her directly. But really, I was just trying to outrun the silence. If I worked hard enough, stayed busy enough, maybe I wouldn't notice the emptiness. Natalie understood then. They were both hiding, just in different ways. She had made herself invisible to avoid pain. He had made himself untouchable, surrounding himself with success and power like armor. When I found you collapsed tonight, Vincent continued, do you know what my first thought was? Not about the portfolio analysis or the deadline. I thought about how you were killing yourself for work that would never be credited to you. For a company that didn't even know your value. And I realized I had let that happen. I had noticed you months ago, seen your talent, watched you pour everything into this place, and I did nothing to acknowledge it. You didn't owe me anything. But I owed myself honesty. He stood and extended his hand to her. Come with me. Natalie hesitated, then placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and steady as he helped her to her feet. The dizziness had mostly passed, though she still felt weak. Vincent kept his hand on her elbow as he guided her out of his office and down the hall to the executive conference room. He flipped on the lights, revealing a large table surrounded by expensive chairs. On the wall was a digital display showing the company's current projects and their lead personnel. Vincent picked up a remote and clicked through several screens until he reached the portfolio analysis project. Derek Sullivan's name was listed as the project lead. Watch, Vincent said, and he accessed the system settings. Within moments, he had pulled up the actual file history, showing every edit and contribution. Natalie's username appeared dozens of times. Derek's appeared only twice, both times simply uploading her work under his name. Vincent made several quick changes. When he was done, the display showed a new structure. Natalie Brooks was listed as senior analyst and project lead. Derek Sullivan had been moved to a supporting role, effective immediately, Vincent said. You report directly to Thomas's Way, our CFO. Your salary is being increased by 40%, and your contributions will be credited properly from now on. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. You can't just do this because I fainted. I'm not. Vincent turned to face her fully. I'm doing this because you earned it months ago, and I should have done it then. The fainting just reminded me that staying silent has consequences. For both of us, she wanted to argue, to retreat back into her comfortable invisibility. But looking at Vincent, seeing the determination in his eyes, she realized something had shifted. Not just in how he saw her, but in how she saw herself. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. This means you'll be in high-level meetings, presenting directly to the board, having your name attached to major decisions. You won't be invisible anymore. The thought terrified her, but it also sent a small thrill through her chest. Can I ask you something? Natalie said. Why do you really care? There are dozens of talented people in this company. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and honest. Because when I looked at you tonight, unconscious on that floor, I realized something. In the 2 years you've been here, you're the only person who has never asked me for anything. Never tried to impress me or manipulate me or use proximity to me for advancement. You just did good work because it mattered to you. That's rare. That's valuable. He paused. And if I'm being completely honest, you're the first person in 4 years who has made me feel something other than numb. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous territory. This was her boss, the CEO, someone so far above her in every hierarchy that mattered. But when she looked at him, she didn't see the untouchable executive. She saw a man who had built walls just like hers, who understood loneliness in the same language she spoke. I should go home, she said, though she didn't move. Get some rest. Let me drive you. You're in no condition to take the subway. That's not necessary, Natalie. The way he said her name made her breath catch. Please, let me do this one thing. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They rode the elevator down in comfortable silence. The building was empty now, the night cleaning crew already finished with this floor. Vincent's car was in the executive parking garage. sleek black sedan that probably cost more than she made in 2 years. The drive to her apartment in Brooklyn took 30 minutes. They talked about small things, safe things, favorite books, the best coffee shops in the city, the peculiar satisfaction of solving a complex problem. But underneath the casual conversation, Natalie felt the weight of everything unsaid. When they pulled up to her building, Vincent put the car in park, but didn't unlock the doors immediately. "Natalie," he said, "I need you to know something. What I said tonight about you making me feel again, that wasn't a line, and it puts us in a complicated situation. I know. There are policies, power dynamics, 1,000 reasons why this should stay strictly professional. I know that too." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her pulse race. "But I also know that I haven't felt this alive in years, and I don't want to lose it. I don't want to lose you back to the shadows." Natalie reached for the door handle, her hand trembling slightly. "Then don't let me hide. Even when I try to." She slipped out of the car before he could respond, before she could say something that would change everything. But as she climbed the steps to her building, she could feel his eyes on her, and she knew that everything had already changed. Neither of them was invisible anymore. The morning sun cast golden light across the Harrington Enterprises building as Natalie stepped through the glass doors at 7:30. She had barely slept, her mind replaying every moment of the previous night. Vincent's words, his touch, the way he had looked at her as though she mattered, as though she had always mattered. The security guard at the front desk smiled at her warmly. "Good morning, Miss Brooks. Congratulations on the promotion." Natalie stopped mid-stride. "How did you already know about that?" "Company memo came through an hour ago." Big news travels fast around here. Her stomach tightened as she rode the elevator up. She had hoped for a quieter transition, a chance to adjust to her new role without becoming the center of attention. But apparently, Vincent had other plans. The moment she stepped onto the 38th floor, she felt the difference. Conversation stopped. Eyes followed her. The woman who had been invisible for 2 years was suddenly the most visible person in the room. Grace Mitchell, HR director, was waiting by Natalie's old desk with a warm smile. "There's our new senior analyst. Your new office is ready on the 40th floor. Let me help you pack up. I have an office." Natalie's voice came out higher than intended. "Of course, all senior analysts do. Come on, let's get you settled." As they gathered her belongings, Natalie caught sight of Derek Sullivan across the room. His face was red, his jaw clenched tight. When their eyes met, the fury in his expression made her step back involuntarily. Grace noticed and lowered her voice. "Don't let him intimidate you. He's been riding on other people's work for years. It's about time someone called him on it." The new office was small but beautiful, the window overlooking the city and enough space for a proper desk and 2 chairs for meetings. Natalie set down her box of belongings and took a deep breath, trying to absorb the reality of this change. Her phone buzzed with a message from Vincent. "Senior staff meeting at 9. Conference room A. Your input will be needed on the Westfield merger." The Westfield merger. It was the biggest deal Harrington Enterprises had attempted in 5 years. A complex acquisition that would either establish them as a major player in the international market or drain their resources catastrophically if mishandled. Natalie had been studying the financials for weeks. Though she had never expected to be involved in the actual decision-making process, she spent the next hour preparing, pulling up her analysis and refining her projections. When 9 o'clock arrived, she made her way to conference room A with her tablet clutched in slightly trembling hands. The room was already full. Thomas Way, the CFO, sat at Vincent's right hand. Department heads filled the other chairs, all of them at least a decade older than Natalie, and at the head of the table sat Vincent himself, looking every inch the powerful CEO in his charcoal suit and burgundy tie. When Natalie entered, he looked up and something softened in his expression. "Miss Brooks, please take the seat next to Thomas." The meeting began with standard updates, but Natalie could feel the tension in the room. Something was wrong. She could see it in the tight set of Vincent's shoulders, the way Thomas kept glancing at his phone with a deepening frown. Finally, Vincent addressed the elephant in the room. "We have a situation with the Westfield merger. Someone leaked our offer terms to Titan Industries. They're now preparing a counterbid that undercuts us by 15%. Shocked murmurs filled the room. Natalie's mind raced. Those terms had been confidential, accessible only to a handful of people. The leak had to have come from inside the company, who had access to those terms. Someone asked. Thomas pulled up a list on the main screen. 7 names appeared. Natalie's was at the bottom, added just 3 days ago, when Vincent had granted her access to the secure files so she could complete her analysis. The room's energy shifted immediately. Eyes turned toward her, some curious, others openly suspicious. She was the newest person on that list, the least established, the most obvious suspect. Derek Sullivan, sitting near the back, spoke up with barely concealed satisfaction. Interesting timing, don't you think? Miss Brooks gets unprecedented access to confidential files. And suddenly we have a leak. That's enough. Derek, Vincent's voice was sharp as a blade, but Derek pressed on. Emboldened by the murmurs of agreement around the table, I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. She appears out of nowhere with a sudden promotion, gets access to our most sensitive deal, and within 72 hours, our competitors know everything. Maybe someone should ask how a junior analyst affords an apartment in Brooklyn on her salary. The implication was clear and insulting. Natalie felt her face flush with anger and humiliation. Said that's enough. Vincent stood, his presence commanding immediate silence. Miss Brooks has been with this company for 2 years and has demonstrated nothing but integrity and dedication. Unlike some people in this room who have built careers on taking credit for others' work. Derek's face went purple, but he said nothing more. Vincent turned to Natalie, and she saw the conflict in his eyes. He wanted to protect her, but he also had a responsibility to the company. Natalie, I need to ask you directly. Did you share those terms with anyone, intentionally or accidentally? Every eye in the room fixed on her. This was the moment that would define everything. Her new position, her relationship with Vincent, her entire future at this company. No, she said clearly, meeting Vincent's gaze directly. I accessed the files only from my work computer, which is password protected. I didn't discuss the terms with anyone, didn't print any documents, didn't send any emails about the content. You can check my access logs and my communications records. You will, Thomas said, not unkindly. Standard procedure in situations like this. Everyone on that access list will be investigated. The meeting continued, but Natalie barely heard the rest of it. Her mind was spinning, trying to figure out who could have leaked the information and why they would want to sabotage the merger. When the meeting finally ended, Vincent asked her to stay behind. The room emptied slowly, with several people casting suspicious glances her way. Once they were alone, Vincent's professional mask cracked. I'm sorry you had to go through that. You're just doing your job. The company has to come first. The company, yes, but not at the cost of destroying someone innocent. He moved closer, then seemed to think better of it, and maintained his distance. I meant what I said. I don't believe you had anything to do with this, but you have to investigate anyway. I have to be fair to everyone, which means following procedure even when every instinct tells me it's a waste of time. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. This is exactly what I was afraid of. The moment people see us together, the moment I show you any favor, your credibility gets questioned. Natalie understood what he wasn't saying. Their connection, whatever it was becoming, had made her a target. And it would continue to make her vulnerable as long as people could use it against her. Maybe we should keep our distance, she said quietly. Professionally, I mean. Until this gets resolved? Pain flickered across Vincent's face. Is that what you want? It's what makes sense. It was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once, sharp and final. You're right. I'll have Thomas oversee the investigation personally. Everything will be handled by the book. Natalie left the conference room feeling hollow. She had done the right thing, the smart thing. So why did it feel like she had just made a terrible mistake? The next 3 days were brutal. Thomas conducted interviews with everyone who had access to the confidential files. IT specialists combed through computer logs and email records. Natalie cooperated fully, providing her passwords and consenting to a complete audit of her digital footprint. She saw Vincent only in passing, and when their paths crossed, he maintained a cool, professional distance that hurt more than she wanted to admit. She told herself this was temporary, that once the investigation cleared her name, things could return to whatever normal looked like for them. But doubt crept in during the long nights. What if they never found the real culprit? What if suspicion followed her for the rest of her career? What if Vincent decided she was more trouble than she was worth? On the fourth day, Grace Mitchell appeared at Natalie's office door looking grim. "Thomas needs to see you in his office." Now, Natalie's heart sank. This was it. They had found something, some piece of evidence that implicated her. Her career was over before it had really begun. Thomas's office was on the 41st floor, spacious and organized. He sat behind his desk with Vincent standing by the window. Both men's expressions were unreadable. "Sit down, Natalie," Thomas said. She sat, her hands gripped together in her lap to keep them from shaking. "We've completed our investigation," Thomas continued, "and we found the source of the leak." Natalie held her breath. It was Derek Sullivan. Words took a moment to register. Derek, but his name wasn't on the access list. No, but yours was. And he still had administrative access to your computer from when you worked under him. He never removed his backdoor credentials when you were promoted. Thomas pulled up security footage on his screen. "We have video of him at your desk at 2 in the morning, 5 days ago. He accessed the confidential files using your login." Relief and anger flooded through Natalie in equal measure. "He set me up." "Tried to," Vincent said, speaking for the first time. His voice was cold with fury. "He leaked the information to Titan Industries because his brother-in-law works there. He was promised a position and a substantial finder's fee, and he tried to frame you to cover his tracks. He's been escorted from the building," Thomas added. "We're filing criminal charges for corporate espionage and theft of trade secrets. The evidence is overwhelming." Natalie should have felt vindicated, should have felt triumphant, but all she felt was tired. "So it's over. Investigation is over," Thomas said. "Your name is completely cleared. In fact, your analysis helped us identify discrepancies in the leaked information that we've been able to use to our advantage. Titan Industries based their counteroffer on incomplete data." He smiled slightly. "We're going to win the Westfield merger after all." "I'll leave you two alone," Thomas said, reading the room with practiced ease. He left his office, closing the door quietly behind him. Silence stretched between Natalie and Vincent. For days of distance had created a gulf that seemed impossible to cross. "I never doubted you," Vincent said finally. "Not for a second. But you had to investigate anyway. I had to be fair. I had to do things properly, especially because of how I feel about you." He moved closer. "If I had shown favoritism, if I had dismissed the concerns without investigation, it would have destroyed your credibility permanently. People needed to see that you were cleared through proper channels, not through executive protection." Natalie understood the logic, but it didn't ease the ache in her chest. "These past few days have shown me something. Being noticed comes with a price. People will always question my achievements now, always wonder if I earned them or if you gave them to me. Let them wonder. You know the truth? I know the truth. Is that enough?" Vincent reached out and gently took her hand, the first time he had touched her since that night in his office. "Natalie, I spent 4 years building walls to protect myself from feeling anything. Then you collapsed at your desk, and suddenly those walls didn't seem as important as making sure you were okay. These past few days, keeping my distance from you, pretending I didn't care, it was the hardest thing I've done in years." "Vincent, ... double quotes," she whispered. "I know this is complicated. I know there will be gossip and speculation. I know some people will always doubt your abilities because of our connection." He moved closer, his other hand coming up to cup her face. "But I also know that I haven't felt this alive since Kara died. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you." Natalie leaned into his touch, feeling the last of her resistance crumble. "I'm scared. People always leave. I know. I'm scared too. Scared of losing someone I care about again? Scared of opening myself up to that kind of pain?" His thumb brushed across her cheek. "But maybe being scared means it matters. Maybe it's worth the risk." She thought of her father, of all the years she had spent hiding to avoid the pain of abandonment. But she thought, too, of the past week, Vincent's faith in her even during the investigation, of the way he had fought for her credibility while respecting the process. "Okay," she breathed. "Let's be scared together." Vincent smiled, a genuine expression of joy that transformed his entire face. Then he leaned down and kissed her, soft and careful, a promise and a question all at once. Natalie kissed him back, and in that moment, she stopped being invisible. She stopped hiding in the shadows. She chose to be seen, to be vulnerable, to trust that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. When they finally pulled apart, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "There's going to be paperwork. HR protocols for workplace relationships, especially between executives. I know, and people will talk. Let them." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Who are you? And what have you done with the woman who spent 2 years hiding at her desk?" She met someone who made her want to be brave. They stood together in Thomas's office, the city spreading out below them. Two people who had built walls around their hearts finally letting someone in. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges and complications and moments of doubt. But for the first time in years, neither of them was facing the future alone, and that made all the difference.